So hello, Sesja Linuksowa. Thanks everyone who stayed, and thanks to everyone who's on the live stream. So today I'm going to talk about why open source software isn't free. There will be a lot of overlap with the previous presentation, which Maciej hosted. And it has been a long day. There has been many presentations today, so hopefully I will manage to keep you awake. So yeah, let me introduce myself first. So my name is Krzysztof Kowalczyk, and I'm a software engineer at Elastic. And as mentioned, I'm a self-taught engineer. Also, I managed to learn Japanese on my own. So as you can see, I don't really like public education, and my formal education ended in high school. But if I could turn back time, I would probably drop out of high school. That was such a waste of time, honestly. I would also say that I'm a UX enthusiast. And what does it mean? Well, I believe that any good software needs good UX. And don't confuse UI for UX. You don't really need UI to have UX. No matter what kind of software you develop, you will always have some users, and they need a good experience. So if you can't deliver that, then your software isn't really good. And also I like capybaras. I'm not sure if you guys know, but there is a neighborhood in some town in Argentina, and they run a capybara sterilization program because apparently there's too many capybaras, which is weird. How can there be too many capybaras? The world is going crazy times we live in. So when it comes to my open source experience, I'm one of the 12% that Maciej talked about. So I'm the guy who gets paid to write software. I currently work at Elastic, and just a disclaimer that everything I say today is my own opinion. I'm not representing my company today. So this is not, whatever I say is not an official stance of my company. Most of my career has been in open source development, although on the corporate side. So my presentation is going to be biased towards that. It's going to be complete opposite of the previous presentation. Let's get started. So first, let's define what open source software is. It's a software you can freely use, modify, and share. That's a very condensed definition, very, very short. For full definition, I recommend reading opensource.org. The full definition is quite long and complicated, to be honest. But when you think about open source software, you can basically think about something you can freely use, modify, and share. There are many flavors of open source software. There's fully open source software and other kinds. But for the purpose of this talk, I'm going to refer to all open source software as open source software without caring about the details. So when it comes to the software, you need to, how do you know if a piece of software is open source? Well, there's something called a license. There are many licenses. There's a full list of open source compatible licenses, which you can view at opensource.org. Most popular license, I think, is MIT, and it's, I guess, mostly because it's a default license. When you create a repository on GitHub, you will get a MIT license. Usually it's just a file, literally called license, without an extension. Sometimes people also define their license as a comment on top of their code on each and every file, but that's not really necessary. I mean, I don't really know, I'm not a lawyer, but I guess simply defining a license file is enough. Who knows? Yeah, so you might think that open source software is all great and it's a great idea, but there has to be a catch. So there's this great show called Mr. Robot. If anyone hasn't watched that, I recommend that. And in the very first episode, the main character goes to a cafe, and he approaches the owner of the cafe, and he asks about the Wi-Fi there, because it's really good Wi-Fi, like better than what he has at home. And this is when he says this quote: "It's good, so good, it scratched that part of my mind, the part that doesn't allow good to exist without a condition." So what's the condition, or rather a catch, for open source software? Well, this is the catch. As you can see by the triple equal signs, it's JavaScript. I know probably this audience doesn't really like that, but this is what I work with. And if you actually evaluate this expression, you will get true. Or maybe not, maybe I'm just joking. JavaScript is weird after all. So yeah, the gist of it is that time is money, and basically every time you write a piece of software, whether it's open source or closed source, you spend your time. And this is true for other activities related to writing software, like reviewing. And there's only 24 hours a day, so your time is limited. So you also need to like feed yourself. You need to live somewhere, so you can't just dedicate your whole day to open source software. Someone has to pay for that. And there are many ways open source software gets compensated, but a lot of them don't get compensated at all. According to a report from 2024, 60% of open source maintainers are unpaid. So they don't receive any kind of compensation. So it's a weird thing that in this industry, like a lot of people work for free. Like think about any other industry, and you won't find that many people doing stuff for free. This is very unique to software. And because those people are unpaid, there's a lot of stress on them. This is a word map of words set by open source maintainers to describe how they feel about what they do. So as you can see, like what stands out the most is burnout. If you don't know what burnout means, it's basically a mental condition when you are so fed up with everything you're doing that you can't really function properly anymore. And going on a vacation is not really a solution to that. If you go to like any open source repository and you go to the list of issues, you will find that a lot of people are very, very demanding. Like they think that they can come in and ask for something, and they think that they deserve the software, they deserve the code, but that's not really the case. Although I know that a lot of maintainers like feel pressured to satisfy everyone, especially people who are new to the industry. They might feel like they need to prove themselves, they owe something to the community, but that's not really true. If you are an open source maintainer, you don't really owe anything to anyone. So, because of that, open source software maintainers are vulnerable. There has been multiple social engineering attacks on open source maintainers. The most worth talking about is the xzutils. It's a compression library, some low-level compression library used by many other pieces of software. And this particular attack was very sophisticated. I'm not sure if it was proven, but apparently it was a state-sponsored attack. And how it worked is basically that library was developed and maintained by one person for years. The person was unpaid. He had to work a lot, and he got tired and wanted to retire. So some kind soul came to him, started helping him, contributing code reviews and stuff like that. And eventually, after I think a year or two, that person was promoted to have more permissions for the repository. And then they simply injected some malicious code, and it would go unnoticed until some security researcher, or no, it wasn't a security researcher, it was basically a user who was benchmarking the software, and he noticed that suddenly it started using way more memory than before. Then he dug into the code, and he found that there is some malicious code exfiltrating data. So as you can see, if you are a person who's very, very open to people who wants to help them by working on open source, you might end up being targeted by various people who will try to exploit you. And that's also the case for all the other software I listed here. The recent one being Axios. One of the maintainers got invited for an interview. He downloaded some software which was supposed to be used for that, and yeah. Then we had a supply chain attack which impacted a lot of people. Yeah. So, how can you help? You as a person who likes open source software, what you can do. One of the things you can do is sponsor people. There are many ways of doing that. A lot of open source software lives on GitHub, and GitHub has a very nice way of sponsoring people. They run a program which is very easy to set up. Like if you are interested in getting support from others, setting up this sponsor thing is very easy. But the thing is, basically, there's not a lot of traction. I don't really have data for that, but basically, when you donate to someone like a streamer or someone like that, you get this dopamine hit. You feel better about yourself. You get your name on the screen, and for like 2 minutes, you are the king of the world. But when you sponsor someone on GitHub, you only get a badge on your profile, which if your profile isn't viewed very much, then who cares about that? No one will see that. So a lot of people who would be willing to donate, they don't do that because I'm not sure if there's some science behind this, but majority of the people who donate to various causes, they don't do that because they are good people. They do that because they want to feel better about themselves or get that dopamine hit with this. It's not the same, but it's still worth doing if you have some projects you enjoy or some developers. You can easily sponsor them, at least on GitHub. There might be some other initiatives on other platforms, but I'm not sure about that. And for GitHub, the process is very simple. You have this button, the sponsor button, on the profile on profiles of developers, and on repositories. You click that button. You choose whether you want recurring payment or whether you want one-time payment. You choose the amount, and that's it. It doesn't really take much. So yeah, again, if you feel like you like some piece of software, think about helping out. Yeah. Another way of helping open source software maintainers is direct contributions. And when it comes to direct contributions, a lot of software has programs for new contributors. Like I currently work at Elastic, where I work on Kibana, which is a data visualization software. And we have this label, good first issue. And issues like that are designed to be self-contained. So you can just come in, read the issue, and without any further context, you can work on it. Then you simply open a PR, you follow the rules. We have code of conduct and other stuff. Today, Maciej mentioned roadblocks. We have those roadblocks, but they are for a reason. Because not every contribution is valuable. So you need to make yourself useful. And what do I mean by that? This is my activity graph from GitHub. And as you can see, what stands out here is code reviews. 51% of my contributions is code review. So I read more code than I write. And when you work like that, and you get outside contributions, they add up a lot. Although personally, for me, for my team, we don't really get that many, very rarely, but still, not every contribution is worthwhile. And yeah, it takes time. Reading code takes time, especially when someone comes in with a piece of code that does not adhere to your standards. So yeah, keep in mind that if you want to contribute code, be mindful. Like, read all the rules, all the so-called roadblocks, and only then produce some code, because code is cheap. Especially these days with LLMs, anyone can produce code, but someone has to review that. And yeah, there are a lot of problems with contributions. There was a YouTuber who runs a tutorial-based channel. He does tutorials on various programming-related topics, and he did a video on Git and how to basically the basics of Git, how to push to a repository. And in that video, he also talked about contributing to open source. And instead of like providing some made-up example, he actually opened a pull request to a very popular repository, Express.js, which is a HTTP server for JavaScript. It's widely used. And the problem with that is a lot of the people who watched this video, they started literally copying what he did, but worse, they started opening pull requests to update the README with their name and nothing else, basically spam. And if you actually go to Express.js and search for closed issues, you will see a lot of issues like that. And I think it's still ongoing, like people are still spamming that. So yeah, it's a big problem, and even bigger so now with LLMs. And speaking of LLMs, this is a gist of issues created by so-called so-called security researchers, which are not actually security researchers. Basically, this is from curl. They run, I think they used to run a bug bounty program. I don't think they do that anymore. And since LLMs became widely spread, they started getting a lot of reports. But the majority of those reports were pure spam. Like, people would just prompt their LLM, like, go to this repository, find a vulnerability, and open a PR to fix this, or open a bug vulnerability report on HackerOne. So they composed a list of such issues, and some of them are quite funny. Like, the maintainers tried talking to those people, tried asking them to clarify, like, how is it a vulnerability, like, what's the impact? But most of the time they wouldn't really get any reply, although sometimes the people who opened those reports would argue that, yeah, this is very important vulnerability, and it was basically a hell. So they closed their bug bounty program, which is a net negative. But unfortunately, this is the reality we have to face today. There's a lot of spam. So what about open source monetization? We talked about how you can, as an individual, support open source software, But aside from that, how does open source software makes money? Like I said, that open source software is free, but the people who work on open source software, well, they need money to basically live. So one of the ways of how open source projects support themselves is by providing consulting services. So a lot of software is a lot of non-trivial software. It's used by corporations, and that corporation can't really just install a piece of software and tell their developers to learn every single thing about that. It's not how it works. There's always a debate whether it's better to like build something yourself or spend money on that. And usually it comes to that you should, if you are a corporation, you probably should use other software. But yeah, like I said, some software is complicated and they require enterprise support. And what enterprise support is basically if you pay those people money, you can reach out to them. You have priority support. If you have a bug, then you might get it fixed sooner than if you would be someone who comes from outside, like a normal user. So yeah, this model works quite good until it doesn't. And recently, Tailwind CSS, which is a popular library for basically it's a CSS in JS solution, so a front-end solution to write CSS in JavaScript. That's what people do these days. And they had a 4-person engineering team, and they had to lay off 75% of their engineers because of AI. So a lot of people now, they rather prompt their LLM to produce fixes. They rather fork a specific repository and work on fixes themselves. And AI only has sped up this process, so consulting, it works, but it has gotten worse, and it's hard to support a full engineering team just on consulting services alone. But I believe that it's still worth it. Like there are not many downsides to this model. So what is the solution for open source monetization? Well, it's complicated. It's not that easy. And if I had a solution, I wouldn't be here. I would be working on implementing that solution. So basically the gist of the problem is that there are two conflicting ideas. On one hand, you have the whole ideology of open source software, of basically being free, of being a kind of a culture that evolved over the time. But on the other hand, you have real life. You have real people who work on this software. And yeah, I don't think there's a good solution to manage a balance between that. Like you will always have someone who is paid less or isn't paid at all. You can't really do much about it. Although, when it comes to bigger projects, I believe it's kinda on the developers too. Like, there's this concept of personal branding. Like, so some maintainers could really use that. Like, if you don't know who writes this software, like, how do you even support them? Like, yeah, you can go to contributors list and go to people with most contributions and sponsor them, but who does that? So there are a lot of people who work on open source software. They attend conferences, they promote themselves, they run YouTube channels. And this is one of the ways they promote themselves, but also their product, their software. So it is a very complicated problem, and here's the controversial part that many of you will not like. corporate-backed OSS is not evil. Well, I'm kind of biased in this because I work for a corporation who pays me to write open source software, but it's not really that evil. Like, obviously, corporations need to make money. Like, that's the definition of a corporation. Like, it's a company that is designed to make money like any other company. But it doesn't mean that the way they make money is inherently evil. There's many ways to give back to the community. Like, there are many great projects. Today, like Maciej mentioned, the concept of vendor lock-in. But while it is a problem, it also is a solution to another problem, which is fragmented specifications and stuff like that. So, yeah. There's also this thing related to corporate-backed OSS, which is important to understand because some people think that the code itself is the product, but it's not. Code is just code. And how do corporations actually make money from open source software? So, for example, they can host infrastructure to run their software. Like what I do at work, the software I work on is quite complicated. Maybe you have heard about the ELK stack, Elasticsearch, Logstash, and Kibana. Setting everything up takes hours, days, and even I don't really know that much about all the details. Like, I've been there for almost 2 years, something like that, and there's still a lot of unknowns for me. So you can imagine that if a other corporation wants to use some piece of software, they are not that likely to try to integrate it themselves. So they reach out to the vendor of the specific software, and usually those vendors have like solutions where you can basically run their software in cloud. Like, you have all the infrastructure, you have everything configured, and you get enterprise support, which is very valuable. So the concept of open source software started as a movement for people, but software these days is not only for people, but also for corporations. Like, majority of software written is written for other corporations, like B2B enterprise software. That's where all the money is. So you, as an user, you don't really get any negatives really from corporate-backed software, unless you are some kind of purist who really hates the idea that someone is actually profiting from open source software. Unless you are that person, like, there's nothing really to worry about. And I think, like, if more software were actually run by corporations, this whole situation of developers being unpaid, it wouldn't be as bad as it is now. And like I mentioned earlier, a lot of those unpaid people, they struggle a lot, especially with mental health, and especially in countries like USA, where you can't really get good health coverage, healthcare. I mean, you basically run into a spiral of problems. So I'm not really saying that corporations should just buy every piece of software that exists, but we as people shouldn't be really thinking of corporate-backed OSS as something that exists purely out of greed. When it comes to development of that kind of software, you have to remember that since someone is paying for that, there's some priorities. Not everything will be done the way the community wants. Sometimes, even though there's seemingly a lot of push for some kind of feature. It might never land in because that feature is not really prioritized, because like usually corporations have data on how users use their software. And if that data shows that whatever the vocal minority wants is not really the way the software should move forward, then you run into unhappy people who believe they deserve things just because they want them. So yeah, the summary of all of this is that monetization and compensation for open source maintainers is a complicated topic. I can't really cover everything here in the time that we have, and it's still unsolved, I mean, even though there are some initiatives from European Union, for example, to compensate developers. But if anyone has ever tried to get any kind of money from a government, like a dotation or something, like good luck with that. It's really really hard process. There's a lot of bureaucracy involved, and how it would be even determined who gets the money? Like, do you run some dependency check, like what's the most dependent on software, and you pay those people but don't pay the others? It doesn't really make sense. So, by conclusion from all of this is that we should stay open-minded, even if you came here thinking that open source software should remain what it was 50 years ago. It's not really possible. You can't do that. So that's it from me today. Thanks everyone for listening, and yeah, if you have any questions, feel free to ask.
Thank you. And I have questions from the stream. Let me see. Okay, the question is about GitHub sponsoring. How much of the money is actually gets to the developer? GitHub is owned by Microsoft after all.
Yeah, so I'm not really sure on the numbers, but the way it works, I looked it up yesterday. You basically, when you sign up for the sponsorship program, you need a Stripe account. So I assume that whatever Stripe takes is, I'm not sure how much they take, but they take some cut of every transaction. But I don't think GitHub itself takes any money from that. I think they run it basically for free. So yeah, I think you will get most of the money, but definitely not all, because Stripe definitely takes some kind of cut.
Okay, we have a question.
Yeah, so a question about the GitHub. Do they take actions against the spam of issues with Express.js, or do they, for example, ban the account of people who are aggressive towards the developers? Are there any there is any accounting from the platform towards those people?
Yeah, there is. I'm not sure on the details, but people do get banned if they spam or if they contribute with spam. But in most cases, I think it's not fully automated. You actually need to report those people, and it's another step you need to take as a maintainer, which takes your time. So yeah, it's kind of one of those problems that it's really hard to solve. It's basically like botting in video games. You can come up with some solution, but eventually people will keep spamming. And there's this weird thing about people who believe they believe that to get a job in software engineering, you need to follow a very specific path, and that path includes contributing to open source software. So they think that they need to contribute to actually land a job, and they often don't even have any idea what they are contributing to, which leads to a lot of spam. But yeah, to answer your questions, yes, the GitHub does ban those people, but it's not enough. Yeah.
By the way, you can also ask questions in Polish. Up to you. And next question.
A propos właśnie Visual Studio Code'a, to nie do końca zgadzam się, że firma kontrolująca jakiś projekt jest dobrym pomysłem ze względu na to, że Microsoft wykorzystuje teraz VS Code'a, żeby puszować swoje wspaniałe i nieomylne AI. I według mnie lepszym pomysłem jest pracowanie nad ustandaryzowanymi protokołami, żeby faktycznie problem decentralizacji nie był aż taki wielki. Po prostu jak spojrzymy na protokół taki jak LSP, czyli Language Server Provider, po prostu to jest bardziej użyteczne i zamiast być jednym oprogramowaniem, kilka różne edytory tekstu mogą wykorzystywać ten sam protokół, żeby pozwalać na edycję języka i to jest według mnie lepsze niż korzystanie z Visual Studio Code'a, czy tam budowanie właśnie jednego edytora, który robi wszystko i wszystkie inne edytory nic nie mogą zrobić.
Yeah, I mean, you're right, but at the same time, things like VS Code exist for a reason. Like, it's very complex software, very non-trivial software, and the way like you might use code editors might be completely different than what other people do with how they use VS Code. And a good piece of software, like I said, needs to have good UX, and to have good UX, you need to accommodate for as many users as possible. And with solutions that are not backed by corporations, it's really hard to do. Like, for example, at my previous company, we worked on something called Swagger UI and Swagger Editor. They are tools for API documentation. And when it comes to Swagger Editor, it previously used a rich text editor called Ace Editor. It was like an open source project. It wasn't really backed by any corporations. And as the number of features in Swagger Editor grew, the Ace Editor started becoming a problem. Like, users wanted features, but building them on top of Ace Editor was very problematic, and even contributing to Ace Editor was a problem. So eventually, Swagger Editor made a switch. They switched to Monaco Editor, and Monaco Editor is basically the VS Code as a package, and it was night and day basically. A lot of new features could be built on top of that. So yeah, I agree with your sentiment that it's not always the right thing to do. But if you want to write something that is complex and accommodates for as many users as possible, you need that money. So yeah, that's the idea.
Właśnie jeśli chodzi o właśnie filozofię ogólnie Unixową, to właśnie chodzi o to, żeby robić jedną rzecz dobrze, a nie żeby robić kilka rzeczy no po prostu, ale jako tako. Więc gdybyśmy mogli podzielić komponenty edytora tekstu na reużywalne fragmenty, to według mnie to by było lepsze niż posiadanie jednego monolita.
Yeah, I mean that's right, but in the end, someone has to work on that, and that someone needs to get paid.
Okay, we have a question on the other side.
Yeah, I have a question about the corporate-backed OSS. Aren't you worried that the companies that support it and create the open source software will at some point decide that it's not profitable enough for them and will decide to just close their software, not publish like maybe next versions of it, and then just continue as closed source projects?
Yeah, and that's true. That's a worry, and it happens all the time. Like Most famous case of that is Redis, which is basically a key value database. Like, it's more than that, but you can simplify that description. And they, for a long time, they were fully open source. And at some point, they pulled the plug and they changed their license. So if you wanted to use it for anything that is monetized, you would have to pay them for their license. And what happened next is that it basically backfired. Like, people started boycotting their software, and eventually, I think they went back to being open source. I'm not exactly sure on that, but yeah, usually it's a bad idea, and it's bad for money too. So people who run those corporations, they learned from their mistakes, and they don't really do that. But it's always a worry. But it doesn't happen. It's not happening that often.
Okay, we have 2 more questions.
Yeah, thanks. I would ask about your personal opinion and experience as a maintainer and working with the contributors, because in your current project and also in the past you mentioned you're writing the open source software, and I guess that just beside working from your colleagues with your team, you have those requests from the people. And I'm not asking about any specific data or percentage, but your general feeling. Those people were like random dudes trying to help you, or just some people from corporations, government, whatever? Were they demanding? Were they spamming? Were they just asking for a lot of stuff and not doing improvement by themselves or otherwise? Maybe they were helpful. Just your personal experience in that.
Yeah, so when it comes to that stuff, usually like there's some priority system, and what gets prioritized the most is those paying customers. Whatever issues they open, they get resolved first. But when it comes to like normal people coming in and opening an issue about a bug, well, most of the time, those issues are actually valid. We triage all of them. And if it's something that actually needs attention, it gets the attention it needs. But sometimes people are like opening issues about the stuff they don't understand. Like, we had an issue open about some test utilities which weren't even used, and someone opened an issue that there's a bug with them, but we didn't really even use those utilities. So there are things like that, but most of the time, people who want to contribute by either opening an issue or opening a pull request, usually it's those people mean well, and they actually make valuable contributions. So that's my personal experience.
I wanted to ask one question, because during this whole talk, we've kind of been conflating open source software with software that's available at no cost. But if we go by definition, if you read the Free Software Foundation definition, if you read the Open Source Initiative definition, there isn't really anything there that prevents you from charging money. If you read the MIT license, if you read the GPL, once again, there's nothing there that really prevents you from charging money from MIT license or GPL license software. So I'm just wondering, if this is pretty much a cultural issue where we've kind of conditioned people to associate free software, open source with available at no cost, and now it's just really difficult to back out of this cultural association.
Yeah, I think there are 2 sides to this. One of this is what you mentioned. The people associate open source software with being free, fully free. So if suddenly things changed, there would be a major revolution. I guess people would start forking everything, and a lot of people would be upset about this. But there's also the other side of this. Basically, just because you can do something doesn't mean that everyone knows how to do that. You can monetize everything pretty much in life, but to do that efficiently, to actually get someone to pay you, there's more than slapping a a price on something. You actually need a strategy for that. And a lot of people who develop software, they are not business people. They are developers. So even if they could, they probably wouldn't know how to monetize that. So there are two aspects to that. Yes, people are conditioned to getting free stuff, but at the same time, the developers usually have no idea how to get money.
Co do korporacyjnego wolnego oprogramowania, to warto też zwrócić uwagę na Chromium, które na przykład sabotuje tworzenie blokerów reklam.
Yes, that's an issue. Chrome is actively sabotaging ad blockers, and like I said, life is complicated, and there will always be some conflicts of interests, and yeah, you can't really do much about it. Like, I'm not saying like corporate backed software is like all sunshine and rainbows. It has its own flaws, but I think the being corporate backed is in a way a lot better than not getting anything at all. So yeah.
Hi, thank you for your presentation. I have a question. Did you use Facebook for this "it's complicated" meme, or is it something else?
Yeah, it's from Facebook. I actually went to my Facebook settings.
Okay, so corporate-backed software is useful in the end.
You can make memes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Krzysztof, for your presentation.